here is some potting soil that I mixed up a couple weeks ago. I have reason to go back now and to look at it and see where I did not mix perlite incorrectly. I was originally repotting some plants, like some ZZ plants, so I only amended it with a little bit of perlite. And then I made the mistake of not putting that perlite in and repotting this Calathea Warscewiczii. You can see what happened. I actually repotted my rhubarb as well, but let's focus on this first. My Warscewiczii, within a few days after repotting it in this soil, well, this plantlet I broke off and it's looking okay. That's a new leaf coming in. But the larger plant is obviously having a soil aeration issue. This is what happens in my house when I have problems with not enough oxygen getting to the roots of a plant or a Calathea. So unfortunately, what we're gonna have to do now is amend it with that additional perlite, those 2 extra bags that you saw initially in the video. And I'm just gonna mix it in really well, right? I noticed that very likely part of what's gone on is that below the surface of the soil for that Calathea that looks like it's heavily amended with perlite, likely has pockets that aren't, and they're probably clinging around the roots and preventing the roots from taking in oxygen. So just keeping them really compacted with dense, wet soil, which is absolutely not what a Calathea wants. Now, some people have mentioned in the comments, you put way too much perlite into your potting soil. I have to say that in my house, this is the only thing that works for Calatheas. The first Calathea emergency I ever had was soil aeration. And just like you saw at the beginning of the video, I had a medallion whose leaves completely curled up. The stems started to go outward flat toward the pot. And it took me a very long time to find out that this could happen with a Calathea when the soil wasn't aerated enough. And so I went out that night, I repotted it like you see me doing now. Right here, what I'm doing is I'm gently removing this clumped soil from the roots, right? I can tell this is just, it was clinging onto these roots, preventing him from being able to take oxygen in. And I repotted it, and voila, within 12 hours, the plant had recovered. And now, unfortunately, you'd think that that would teach me a lesson about drainage, about soil aeration, but I've had this happen a few times where I've tried to lessen the perlite content in my soil. And what I've done is, one of the things I mention a lot when I fertilize Calatheas is I only use worm castings through top dressing these days because they're very sensitive to fertilizer burn. I don't like messing around with that with my Calatheas at this point. And I do feel like that really is it's putting the nutrition back in the soil. And I do have to say as well that even this high level of a perlite content in my house, right, just my house, I don't know what might go on in other climates, other conditions where pressure is different, where you're at different sea levels. But I know where I am that the actual moisture will actually, the mixture will retain some moisture. It doesn't go completely dry right away. So I don't have to water my Calatheas a ton, even though there is all of this perlite for drainage. So there is still enough soil, there's enough worm castings, there's enough bark and other materials in the soil that do keep it nice and evenly moist for a series of days, right? Instead of soaking wet with clumping soil around the roots, preventing it from being able to take in the oxygen. So for me, this perlite content is what works. But again, it's so hard to say. And right now what I'm doing is I'm trying to make sure that the plant is firmly in the pot without putting any pressure on the roots, without pushing the soil down to the point where I'm compacting it. And now the top hand is the new soil, the bottom hand is the old soil, and I'm looking at it and I can see the bottom soil. I don't know if you can tell, but the way that it clumps is just really, I know that's going to be bad for the roots. And so in my top hand where I've got that amended perlite, it's more crumbly, there's more air pockets. The plant's just going to have a lot more access to oxygen with it. So now I'm going to add in some water because that potting soil that I just added was bone dry. And I'm going to add an additional little bit of soil where I can tell now after watering it where I've maybe have areas that I need a little bit more soil to fill in some areas that I missed. And later in the evening, now that was in the afternoon, this is about 5 hours later, 10, 11 o'clock at night, The leaves are starting to uncurl and recover a little bit, but we'll see tomorrow really what actually happens. And I expect that plantlet, yeah, do you see that? Some of the leaves have recovered. That one was on its way out. I knew it wasn't going to recover, so it completely browned up. But some of them have recovered pretty well. Now, this Warscewiczii, I was already struggling on a scale of 1 to 10 of difficulty for me. This Calathea is like 25. So I have had a hard time with this plant. I'm gonna focus on this plant on my channel and see what I can do to get it to recover. But here you see the plantlet, and it is showing signs that it's not getting the oxygen that it needs. It's starting to droop. I'm seeing the leaves curl up. So this is it 24 hours later. I repotted it, and the leaf that was coming in is unfurling, even though it's nice and damaged, of course. And the other leaves have unfurled as well. And this plant, you can see like there's one leaf here in the front that's recovered or is recovering that I'm very shocked by. So I'll remove the leaves that really aren't going to recover. And then I want to take you on the journey of trying to rehab this Calathea. Like I said, it's the most difficult one in my house. And so I figure, why not show you what I can do with it? Let's cross your fingers for me. Until next time, be well and take care.